everybody. I'm Zenith, Warrior Princess, and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where Kat Macberrie and normally Doug Macberrie and I discuss Disney products and other Disney stuff. But Doug is not here today. But before we get into that, how's it going, Kat?
Spooky, scary skeletons. Spooky, scary skeletons. Happy Halloween, everyone! Even though it's gonna be nowhere near Halloween by the time you hear this, but whatever.
We'll see. I may just upload this on Halloween just to see. I have a bunch of Halloween episodes to put out. Like we have Halloweentown that we're talking about today, and I have the Saw episode that I'm editing at the moment, and a few others. So, you never know.
In which case, happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween, everybody! I love Halloween so much. Halloween is my favorite holiday. It used to be Christmas, but now Christmas is just, I don't have money, so I can't buy any presents for people. And
Christmas
feel
can
bad.
suck a turd.
And it's become so commercialized that I'm just like,
It's like, I like the presents, and the decorum's okay, but at this point it's just obnoxious. So, give me my Halloween. Let's just have Halloween twice.
As they say in Halloweentown, Halloween is cool. It is a day of celebrating the macabre, the grim, the downright ghastly and ghoulish, and I just love everything surrounding the holiday. Just from the original, where it came from, the origins of the pagan holiday, and just, everything that came from it. And, just Samhain and Samhain and whatever interpretation you go for, the idea of creatures roaming the night and you have to appease them by giving them candy. Like, I love it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say that Halloween's like just a kiddie holiday, an excuse for people to dress up and whatever, but I just feel like it's so much more than that, because, it's technically like the end of the season, like the end of autumn, beginning of winter. It's a day where like the dead can walk among the living. There's so many things can happen on Halloween. It's just so exciting. It's like a night where you don't have to be yourself. You can be anybody you want. And nobody can say a damn thing.
As Tim Curry once said, anything can happen on Halloween.
Oh, with him, a lot of things can happen on Halloween.
But yeah, I love Halloween. I love dressing up, and now I have an excuse to dress up slutty too. So it's.
You would dress up slutty. You whore.
But it's a fun time for everybody to just get together and celebrate the undead. It's like the American version of the Day of the Dead for me. So I always celebrate Halloween. I'm always upset because Ari unfortunately does not enjoy Halloween, and I'm like, but Halloween's my favorite holiday of all time. Yeah, she doesn't like holidays whatsoever, so it's like,
Yeah, I know people like that.
Yeah, but I'm just like, I love Halloween. I love celebrating it. So we're gonna be celebrating it today. But Doug is not joining us today because he did not really have much to say about today's movie.
That and he was turned into a chicken.
And he was turned into a chicken. But here's the thing. The movie that we're talking about today, Halloweentown, is a Disney Channel original movie. This is a movie that I grew up with. I grew up on the Disney Channel. So, this is something that I saw every single year on Halloween, much like Hocus Pocus as a kid. And it was a Halloween tradition for me. So, I'm very much biased towards this film. I love it. I will, hold no bars. I have a very different conception of this film than just the casual viewer because I love it to death because I grew up with it. So it's interesting to see outsiders' perspectives. Doug kind of checked out for the movie. He didn't really find anything too much into it. But Kat and I are going to be talking about it today. Any initial thoughts on that, Kat?
Well, for a little background in terms of my history with this movie, I have none. Yeah, I know it's surprising given how much I love Halloween and stuff that I would totally overlook this movie. But the thing is, I grew up without cable for like the longest time, so I was never able to watch the Disney Channel, at least the channel that would show the movies and everything. Once in a while, I would be able to watch something, but for whatever reason, I always missed Halloweentown. Plus, by the time I actually got in a position to actually watch these shows, I was at that age where it's not that I outgrew Disney because I've never outgrown Disney, but I kind of developed a thing against the made for TV movies because around that period they were getting like really dumb, like the Princess Boot Camp thing and all that, which I don't know if
Yeah.
like stuff like that that was just meant to grab your attention for like 90 minutes and you can obviously tell didn't have much effort put into it. So I kind of always just kind of disregarded this film and didn't see any reason to really watch it. The closest I ever did was like I saw reviews about it, and even those reviews didn't really have anything favorable to say about it. So when this got voted, I'm like, oh, I guess I have to watch this now. So, but yeah, I watched it. We all watched it together, and it's okay. Like, the thing is, because I grew up with Nightmare Before Christmas, I'm kind of spoiled in that regard. Because to me, that is like the quintessential Halloween movie, or Christmas, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But to me, like, that is my idea of Halloween. I like Halloween to be scary. I like it to be dark and gothic looking and everything. This Halloweentown is like, it's like something you would see on like a public street where all like the kiddies get out of school and they're going trick or treating from like house to house. This is what I imagine like as a like Halloween as a kid. So yeah, seeing this as an adult like was kind of like
It's a very kid friendly movie, and there are definitely points that we can get into for that because it's not aimed at it's aimed for like people who are like 10 and under, I want to say.
it's
Um,
gotta be like given how cartoony the all the costumes and the animatronics and everything is. This is definitely made for younger kids.
I mean, this is one of those films, kind of like Under Wraps or The Tower of Terror, where they were very much aiming this at a younger demographic, and you can tell nowadays. But it does have this charm to it, and while I will say that, yeah, I notice some of the flaws nowadays, I still love it. Um, So, brief summary of the film. This film is centered around a young girl named Marnie who is now on her 13th Halloween, and her birthday was on Halloween, which is also an interesting thing to note. But yeah, so it's gonna be her 13th Halloween, and she wants to go out trick or treating with everybody else, but her mother forbids it. And her grandmother comes in, and she learns through a conversation she overhears that she is a witch, and she comes from a family of witches, and her mother has been hiding it for her entire life, that there's a separate world known as Halloweentown that operates on a different time scale than the mortal world. And basically all the creatures, all the monsters that, we talk about in fairy tales, exist in this other world because they were persecuted back in the days and they didn't get along with the mortals. And so they go to Halloweentown to stop an evil thing from taking over the town. And shenanigans happen. And I think the first thing that Kat is going to comment on is the fact that the mother has no real reason to hide Halloweentown from the daughters or their magic.
No, she doesn't. And that's really what I kind of brings this movie down for me is the mother's motives throughout the entire movie, because she makes it out to be this big bad secret that she's trying to protect her kids from at all costs. Like her kids are like emitting magic, like as even the youngest one is like having all these bursts of magic and stuff that the mother's desperately trying to hide. And she goes to the length where she's like, she doesn't talk about her family. She barely lets the grandmother visit them, and every time the grandmother gets close to saying something about where she's from, the mother instantly hushes her. And through their conversations, like you're thinking like, oh, something bad must have happened to the mother to make her leave Halloweentown, or you know, some or maybe there's like a curse on the family or something she's fleeing from. But no, she just decided that, you know, after she married their father, she's going to live as a human and just never ever tell the kids about their past or their family or their capabilities, and just sweep it under the rug until they outgrow their powers. Like, that's it. That just pissed me off so much.
I mean, there was something that I was thinking about a little bit, because they do delve into how the mortals used to, they used to like tease the mortals, and the mortals hated and feared them. And so I'm wondering if maybe part of it that wasn't said in the movie is that when she married a human, she suppressed her powers so that, you know, the husband wouldn't leave her, because that has been known to happen. And they talked about, like, you know, for thousands of years, there was dark ages where they were attacked by mortals and whatnot. So maybe that was part of it, but also you have a point in the fact that even if she feared persecution, she could have told the children how to control their powers so they could better hide them.
Yeah, it just, God. Like, when I think of this premise, I kind of think of the sequel to The Little Mermaid. You know, the one where Ursula's sister tries to kidnap Ariel's daughter Melody, and then she disappears. But then rather than, you know, try to hunt down the sister and then tell the daughter that, you know, she's being hunted, so she prepares herself and can fight against a threat, they decide to just completely, like, not tell her anything and shut off themselves from the ocean entirely. And then it's not till later that she gets fooled by the witch that she realizes, oh wait, I'm part mermaid. Like, this was what it reminds me of, because it's like, you're making this more of a thing than it really is. Plus, Halloweentown takes place, what, in early 2000s? Or do we still have like witch hunters? Did we have witch hunters during that period? Was there like evangelical Christians going around like like looking for witches to burn? Like, really? I could see if this was like the early century, like back in like maybe the 50s, I could see something like that happening, but this is like the new century. You're meaning to tell me that they still live in fear to that degree? Most people like see someone doing magic and shit like that and be like, fake.
At the same time, after some of the things that we see in modern times today, people might, you know, because people are banning Harry Potter at schools still in like Texas. So, I mean, you never know. I mean, yeah, it is far-fetched, but
yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me, because for instance, take the movie Hotel Transylvania. Their whole thing was that they hid away because they feared persecution from the humans. But then once they actually went out into the world after many centuries later, turns out everybody likes monsters and the macabre and stuff, and they celebrate them, so they had no reason to shut themselves away. So, like, with this movie, just, like, they kind of give a reason as to why the monsters left the human realm, and that the humans, of course, being stupid at the time and being scared, were, like, always trying to just destroy the monsters, and the monsters would, of course, retaliate, but that was just giving them grounds to, like, become heartless killers, which they didn't want, so you can understand in that regard. But this is, like, centuries later where, you know, dressing up is a regular thing, horror movies are a thing, you know, zombie walks are a thing. Like, in this day and age, especially with all the special effects, like, you can go out and probably perform a whole bunch of feats of magic, and people would be totally accepting of it because they probably would convince themselves it's not real.
Although, at the same time, I think the real draw of this film is Halloweentown itself, and Debbie Reynolds, but we'll get to that in a minute. When they actually go to Halloweentown, is where things really pick up. And as a kid, what drew me in was the mystery of what was going on. And when they get to Halloweentown and see what it is, I was intrigued. And I think the biggest thing is the animation, the animatronics, the effect work, and the costume design is superb.
Oh yeah, that's for certain. Like, granted, the costumes still look like somebody raided the costume section of a Target's, but at the same time, like the animatronics and everyone, like it's really surprisingly good. And the way they incorporate the makeup into them and make it look like they're actually talking and blinking and stuff, like it is rather impressive, especially on the cab driver, who's basically just a skeleton, and somehow he's able to completely like talk and do face articulation and everything. Is like, it's really good. Like, I was surprised.
Yeah, they went all out on the animatronics and the effect work. Honestly, half the time I couldn't tell if they were wearing a mask or if they were using prosthetics or makeup, because there are some like the dog people, which were a little bit you could tell it was makeup, but then there are like these different types of creatures where you couldn't really tell. And especially on Benny, I was looking for some sign of animatronics because he's driving the cab, but they have him turning and everything. Like, I'm guessing it's some sort of remote control operating system, but the way they do it is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading that they said that Benny is like a full-on robot, so he definitely must be remote controlled in some aspect of.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like though that he's so articulated that at that point in the movie where he turns evil, he actually becomes legitimately scary. Like, he goes from goofy to scary in like 2 seconds, and it's so great.
Mm-hmm. I love Benny as a character. I mean, he is one of the biggest jokesters in the movie, but because he runs the psychic cab, because like he drives a cab with no eyes, but he's cracking jokes throughout the entire film, and they should be lame, but I was laughing the entire time because they're making fun of him making fun of stuff.
Yeah, he was definitely one of the funnier highlights of the movie. And the thing I love most is I looked up the voice actor, and the voice actor's done a ton of stuff, but the thing that really caught my eye particularly is that he voices Tuxedo Mask on the Sailor Moon English dub. And now I cannot unsee that, ever.
He just drives up in the cab.
Like,
well, my work here is done.
I expect him to, like, pull up and then, like, pull out a rose or something.
But you didn't do anything, Benny. Didn't I? It is things like that that really adds to the charm of this film, where you can definitely tell it was aimed at younger kids. Some of the costume work is definitely aimed at younger kids, especially when they go on the fetch quest. They have to find 3 items for the witch's brew. But they make a joke earlier on in the film where they tried to use instant witch's brew in the microwave, and its settings are double bubble toil and trouble. And I'm like, that's a fun little reference. Like, there's little things like that that really make this film charming to me.
Yeah, or they show a vampire going to the dentist or a werewolf giving a haircut.
Which is ironic, and like the effect for work when they take out the tooth, they just black it out with like you could tell that she has a normal tooth underneath.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure on an old crappy TV it would have looked convincing, but yeah, now it just looks like you let your tooth rot out.
And then there's also little Disney references like, oh, grandmother's house is just over the river and through the woods. Like, they're fun little things that I think work about this film if you're young. And the biggest thing, though, is the characters. I love these characters, and I think Debbie Reynolds in general as Agatha Cromwell or Agatha Cromwell or Aggie Cromwell, they go back and forth. Debbie Reynolds sells every second. she knows how to be joyful and happy. Like when they're on the broom, she's shouting like, magic is very simple. You just have to want something and let yourself have it. And then when she's talking about evil stuff, she's like, oh, there's something evil in there. No, ooh. Like, she sells every single second in every scene she's in. I'm like, I love you, Demi Reynolds.
Yeah, she was really good in this. Like, definitely the highlight. I see why they put her on the marquee. But, yeah, because, like, it almost feels like she's been waiting her whole life to play a role like this. Which I wouldn't be surprised, because from what I read, she actually was friends with the actress that played the mother on Bewitched. So maybe she was like priming herself for this. But she did a phenomenal job though, and she reminds me of like a grandmother telling like a story to the kids and making it as engaging as possible. Like it's hard to not like listen to her when she's telling a story.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of my grandmother when we used to get like told stories like that. But it's like, it's not even the monologues she has. Every single line could be made into a trailer line, and some have, but it's like, when she's talking to the mother, oh, being normal is vastly overrated. And I'm like, yeah, it is.
I totally agree with that statement.
There's so many things that she says, and I'm just like, it's quotable. Her entire dialogue is so quotable. I'm like, yes. Yes.
It's just a shame that, like, they take her out of the climax, and leave it to the kids to, like, fix things. Like, I get it, this is a kids movie. They want the kids to be the heroes, but I really would have loved to see her, like, let loose and go, like, full-on magical witch, like, smiting the villain or something, because that would have been really cool to see.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, they have a climax where they hum, and yeah, it's really not the best ending for the film, let's be honest. But
no, that ending was really lackluster. Like,
yeah.
What, she puts a flame in a pumpkin, and that somehow defeats the guy. Okay.
And it's kind of weird because the villain is defeated by light and sunlight, but and they showcase this and foreshadow it throughout the film, but then we see him during the sunlight a couple of times in his human form, and he comes in, he makes a dark cloud, but it's clearly sunlight everywhere.
Yeah, I don't understand that, because that's one thing that kind of is a bit off-putting with Halloweentown, is that it's not dark or spooky like you would imagine. It's actually really bright and colorful, and everything takes place during the daytime. So this could easily be like some quaint little like suburb town with everybody wearing a mask. And the fact that the villain is supposed to be like this evil Emperor Palpatine guy who draws from the darkness, but in disguise he's like he's the lovable mayor, and he just goes around from place to place, and it's like, okay, so you can stand being the light as a human, but in your all-powerful darkness form you can't stand light. Yeah, that makes sense.
The other thing is that he is so over the top and hammy as a villain. And on the one hand, I love it because, I love Phantom of the Megaplex, which maybe we'll talk about in a future video, which it has a villain that's very over the top and like that. And I like when they do that, but there was a reason in Phantom of the Megaplex, because he was trying to be hammy like the Phantom of the Opera was. It was for dramatic effect in terms of the character. Here, there's no reason for him to be hammy and over the top, so I'm kind of torn, because I love it when he just like he's tilting his head and it's like, yes, and he's doing his evil declarations, but at the same time I'm just saying there's no reason for any of this.
I think the guy just, he had this dual part, and he's like, I'm just gonna go with it and just, ham it up as much as possible for the kids. Because, like, at one point, I'm like, I half expected him to yell, unlimited power!
Go for Papa Palpatine.
Just, like, edit in Force Lightning there somewhere.
He does have kind of Force Lightning, because the spell he uses to freeze people in time, he does it like Force Lightning.
And yet he just can't stop a girl from dropping a candle into a pumpkin. Like, worst villain ever.
Yeah, Calabar as a villain is, first of all, he's very obviously the villain from the start of the show. Like, you could tell, and maybe not as a kid, but like, watching it now, like, the whole time we were saying, did I mention I'm not a villain?
And it's funny, and it's funny because at first I was lamenting the fact that, wait a minute, this is Halloweentown, and they have a mayor who isn't two-faced? Oh wait, he is. Just not literally.
Wait till you see my second face, where I look like the Scarecrow mixed with the Phantom of the Opera.
I just don't really understand his plan, though. Like, he says that he's sick of Halloweentown being separate from the human world, and that they should take their rightful place there again, and stop living in fear. But at the same time, I'm like, but you live in a quaint little town where all your needs are met. You're not in danger of being attacked by anyone. And, like, nobody has any real problems to speak of. So why do you need to go to the human world? And why do you need people's life force in order to do this? Like, you're expecting loyalty from these people who you are willingly sucking the life out of. You really think that's gonna pan out well for you?
There's a lot of weirdness there, especially because, like, I think part of it is he's jealous that the mother married somebody else because they used to date, and that seems like kind of part of it. But you're the mayor. You can convince the people without the dark powers. You could have done this without all this darkness and whatnot. You could have just said, hey, why don't we just go back to the human world? And even then, the whole stuff with the movie theater doesn't really make sense because he has them frozen in time to do what exactly? Like, is he turning people evil to form an army to conquer the human world? But then why not just persuade them normally? But most of the people don't want to anyway, so okay, that's why he's turning people evil. But then at the end, like, he doesn't continue gaining his army. He doesn't even use the army. He just comes right out and tries to persuade them.
Nothing makes sense.
So, like, I can understand maybe for kid logic they didn't want to make it too complicated, but it is a little bit much.
Like, in their attempt to not make it complicated, they made it very complicated.
Yeah,
because it's like, you could have done this without getting the attention from the most powerful witch in your town. Honestly, he could have pulled this off easily without Aggie ever knowing, had he actually been smart about it. I don't know what he does in the sequels. I know he definitely returns, given what the title of the sequel is, but I really hope his plan's better than this one, or at least a little more thought out, or at least, is not, I should say has a central theme in that he's either fully evil or he's sneaky evil. Something of that nature.
I'll say this much, because I don't want to give too much away, because the title is part of what works about the second film. I do think the second film's better. It's just, he is doing a better plan, and there's a lot more involved with it. But I don't want to give too much away. I will say this, that Calabar's revenge is much better planned than this.
I should hope so. I mean, not that no thought went into this movie. I mean, there is, like, some thought behind it to a degree. I mean, so some of the situations that they show, definitely were from some sort of creative spark. I never would have thought to put a ghost into a sauna.
The sweat of a ghost. That was the best part, because we were all talking about, like, wait a second, ghosts sweat? And they mentioned that in the movie, and I'm like, yes. It's like, ghosts don't sweat. Oh, well, they do now.
That's gonna be one of my favorite lines, though, in the movie, is they're dead. Why do they need to worry about fitness? I'm like, good point. Like, half these people are dead. They technically should have no sort of, like, muscle mass or bone mass or any mass whatsoever, yet they're all working out and trying to lose weight. Why?
I mean, like, there are some little bits and pieces in the movie that I'm just like, I love this. Like, the Elvis impersonator who is selling them the brooms.
Makes no sense, but whatever. We'll roll with it.
It's just like, it's we're gonna roll with it. Maybe Elvis modeled himself after that guy.
Yeah, sure.
Mortal see, mortal do.
Sure, we'll go with that. Although I gotta say, one thing that baffles me about at least in terms of like the kid characters, they keep mentioning how, you know, they always felt different and how they always did odd things and stuff, and they could never explain it until they learned the truth. But I always question, like, what exactly did the kids do? Like, how are they strange? How are they different from everybody else when they look and act like normal kids? Cause think about it, like the oldest girl, like her friends are talking about how, you know, she's so strange, she's into the macabre and into magic and stuff, but she doesn't really come off as that type of person. Like, take for instance Beetlejuice. Lydia is a strange kid. You could tell right off the bat that she is a strange kid. You can't tell that with these kids.
I think part of that is the mother trying to stamp it out of them as much as possible. But
if somebody was genuinely weird, that wouldn't even matter. Because again, referring back to Beetlejuice, Lydia's parents were like these, you know, normal, upstanding, like, socialites and stuff who tried to be as stereotypically normal and outgoing as possible, and she completely, like, goes against all that. You think that would have been the same with the kids too. It just seemed weird, especially in terms of the boy, like, what a friggin' brown noser he is.
Well, I mean, they did have this dynamic in that time period at Disney where they had the brother who was the nerd, you had an older sister, and then possibly a younger one. Like, this was the dynamic at Disney. I don't know why. One thing I will say, though, I love Kimberly J. Brown in the role of Marnie. She doesn't quite fit the bill, like, in terms of the weirdness factor, but she is selling every line, too. And I feel like, she should have been brought back for later films. She's only in the first two. Actually, no, she was replaced in the fourth one. She's only in the first three, but even still, like, she is, to me, out of the three kids, the best actress.
Oh, I agree with that, definitely. She definitely delivers and sells her lines. Like, I was totally rooting for her the whole time, because I was about as frustrated with this movie and with the mother as she was. She pretty much spoke everything that was in my head. So I'm not denying at all that she was a bad actress. Like, she's easily the best kid actor in this movie. It's just, I felt like the movie itself should have shown that weirdness a little more, have her have some sort of weird quirk or something, have her dress a certain way. Like, I'm not saying go full-on stereotypical goth or something, but, you know, something that isn't just, oh, she's a normal kid who just happens to like weird things, which, you know, can mean anything by normal people's standards. So, I would have liked to see something like that.
In terms of the rest of the kids, like, the brother, I don't think he's a bad actor. I think he was given a bad character, because I believe he was in Under Wraps and a few other things, if I'm remembering correctly. He's been in other films, and I liked him better in those. He's just kind of annoying in this, and I think that's the character that they gave him.
Yeah, I kind of agree, too. Like, I hated to say it, but, like, I didn't want to hate the kid, but he made it so easy to hate the character. Like, every time he spoke, I'm like, shut the fuck up! Like, because he's your stereotypical nerdy, like, suck-up, who just, doesn't act his age, who, tries to get the other kids around him in trouble because he believes it's more adult or something. Like, I hate that stereotype so much. And, like, I'm glad that they kind of break him of it toward the end a bit. But it's, like, the duration in which we spend with him, like, I was worried we were going to have to deal with a lot of, that for the whole movie. Especially with him being in denial about everything. Is like, oh, I'm obviously having a dream. Or, no, this is obviously all, like, staged and you're trying to trick me. I'm like, I'm glad that they stopped with that bullshit halfway through the movie. Because I would have probably, like, hung myself at that point.
Yeah, like I really don't like what they did with the character. And as for Sophie, she does okay. I don't think she's a bad actress. I think she's decent, I want to say, but they focus way too much on her character throughout the film because they wanted to get the little kids and saying, "Oh, well, like we can be witches too," instead of giving some of the powers to Marnie. And so I feel like the focus was too much on her as a character.
Yeah, I think she was there mainly to be the cute one. Like that's pretty much her role. Like honestly, looking at these three now, you know who they remind me of? The Baudelaire children from A Series of Unfortunate
Oh
Events.
god. Yep, yep.
But in that case, like I think they should have made the youngest girl like a baby, like with the Baudelaire children, because then it would have made sense for her character. Because you know she's there mainly to be cute. Because she like they show that she does like have some sort of control over her magic, but it's not like she has much of a character. Because you can kind of tell that the actress playing her isn't the best. Like, because considering they show her only like having like one or two lines at a time and just just pretty much doing stuff in the background the rest of the time.
She is good enough to have on stage chemistry with the actors, but she's not like Macaulay Culkin type child actor.
Well, no one could be a Macaulay Culkin type child actor.
But yeah, it's these three kids are what you're supposed to root for throughout the film, and I root for Marnie. The other two I'm kind of iffy on, but as a kid, I was all for it. And I think had they given more of the powers to Marnie, and maybe like having her do the lock maybe or something like that, because a lot of the time Sophie's stealing the show. But then again, that they kind of did this a lot back in the day when they had like the Olsen twins and stuff like that, where you had these child characters who just they knew more than the parents, and they were supposed to be the best people, the smartest people in the room, because the kids movie.
Yeah, I still felt like I feel like if they cut out those two kids, like nothing would have been lost because it's not like they really contribute anything of substance to the movie other than oh well they help amp up the magical factor they need to defeat the bad guy at the end, or oh they happen to spot this one thing that they need. They don't really contribute anything. Like you can easily give all of their lines and roles to Marnie and nothing of consequence would have been lost. So yeah, like I do feel Marnie should have gotten way more focus, and at least I wish they showed her actually using magic, like actively practicing magic, because they didn't really do that in this movie, and I was really disappointed about that.
Yeah, they do that more in the second film, which is a very big point to the credit of that film, and they reduce the number of characters where Sophie and the brother aren't really involved as much, and I feel like that's a huge thing. But there's another character that we should talk about, and that's Luke, who I really enjoyed in this film. But there's also an interesting fact about him that Kat found out.
Yeah, he's actually one of the original voices of Arnold from Hey Arnold. Like, and
Wow.
Doug's actually the one that figured that out because he was like listening to the guy speak and he's like, I know that voice. So, and he kept saying that. So finally I looked it up and I'm like, oh shit, it's Arnold. Or one of the Arnolds, I should say.
I mean, you did the same thing with the mother. Judith Hogue was,
Yeah, Judith Hogue. Yeah, I kept looking at the mother. I'm like, I know her from somewhere. Why is this bothering me? And I look it up and I was like, oh, it's April from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Duh. Weird how things like that happen.
it's very weird. But what I liked about Luke was he was kind of the opposite of the brother for me, where the brother was a character he was a character who was written to be obnoxious and change over time, and I didn't really get behind it. But Luke was the opposite. He was a character who was written to be obnoxious, and then he changed over time, and I really liked his redemption arc where when people started getting hurt, he's like, oh. And he only went with the villain because he made him handsome, because he was really like a goblin of some sort. and that I think makes sense. And he sacrifices himself near the end. He could have died. Disney wouldn't go through with it unless he was a parent. But I think they did a good job ramping the tension with him and giving him a good redemption arc.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Because at first when I saw him, I'm like, oh god, we got a reject from Descendants, really? But yeah, I do like how that he does change once he realizes, oh wait, what I'm doing is evil. I should probably stop that. He actually does legitimately help, and acts like a genuinely good person. And maybe this is just me because I'm a weirdo, but I actually thought he looked better as the goblin as opposed to a person. And
yeah, yeah.
And I will say, though, this movie does do a very rare thing that you do not see very often in Disney movies. It actually pairs up a good-looking person with an ugly person, and the person stays ugly by the end.
Yeah.
Like, you very rarely see that in Disney films. I mean, heck, even the Shrek movies didn't do that. Plus, plus canonically, they paired up a goblin with a witch. How often does that happen?
Mm-hmm. I also really like, during the theater scene where he's like, the villain is saying his lines and then he's just like adding to it to be smug because he's handsome now, and the villain's just like, will you shut up? And like there are some really funny things with him, and I like the idea of this character. I like that they are smart near the end of the film and he puts on the robe to make himself appear to be Marnie, and like there's some clever writing in this. Is it perfect? No, but for a kid's film, I think it's above average.
Yeah, like the movie definitely has a charm to it. You could definitely see how it appeals to younger kids who like Halloween, and it kind of like it. I want to say it's like baby's first Halloween or something like that. A way to get kids involved with Halloween, make them get excited for it. I see this as being a good first movie for that. I still don't think it's a good movie though. I'm sorry to say. Like, despite its attempts to embody Halloween, it kind of feels a little hollow because they're all just like regular people wearing masks. It's not like they do anything special, like, oh, they all eat bugs or they take slime baths or any weird thing like that. Like, I feel like if this had better writers who like added more detail, this probably could have been a lot better.
Mm-hmm. I'm a bit biased. My final thoughts: I still think this movie is a classic. It does have its share of problems looking back on it with a modern mindset, but even still, like, having grown up with this as a kid and loving the ideas and everything involved in it, I still love it. Is it perfect? No. It's definitely aimed at younger kids, and I can definitely agree with that. I don't still watch it every Halloween as I used to, but I still think it's a good introductory film for little kids. Final thoughts, Kat?
It's a cute enough film. It's not really my cup of tea. Again, I didn't grow up with it. I am not the target demographic for this, despite my love of Halloween. I say, show it to your kids if you want something like simple and fun for them that isn't too over the top scary. But otherwise, I still suggest watching Nightmare Before Christmas over this, because at least that one has like an identity and a full character to it, whereas this is just kind of feels like they were reaching, but they missed the mark. Like, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying that it's bad or that the people who like it should feel guilty, not by any means. I just don't think it's as great, and I don't like it as much as you do.
The way I feel is that if you're 10 and under, you should watch Halloweentown. If you're in your teens, watch Hocus Pocus. Of the films that we've discussed, because those, those types of films are the age brackets that they were aiming for, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then go from there.
And if you're hardcore, watch Nightmare Before Christmas.
With that being said, next time, what are we doing next time? I completely forget. Kat, what are we doing next time?
Next time, I believe we're going back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, actually.
Oh yes, because next time we have more of the Marvel Initiative. We have actually, we did an episode on Iron Man 1 way back when, and we are going to talk about the Incredible Hulk next. Not the Ang Lee one, because that doesn't exist.
Nope, that never happened.
But we're talking about the one with the guy from Fight Club. So we will talk about that next time. With that being said, I am Zenith, Warrior Princess.
And I'm Kat Macberrie, and this is Doug McBerry as a chicken.
We turned him into a chicken because we don't like him anymore because he's bald.
He doesn't like you.
But with that being said, have a good one, guys. And just remember, if you have Debbie Reynolds in your movie, I'm going to automatically like it because I can forgive any flaws for that performance alone.
And I'm just going to steal everybody's Halloween candy. Happy Halloween, everyone!
Bye!
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/ZenithWillReview.